Who likes genitals? Exactly. Yes, love it. Yes, thank you for having me back. I had a great time the first time, so obviously had to come back and talk about vaginas, vulvas, and everything else in between as well. So I'd like to start by making two acknowledgements. Firstly, I want to echo the acknowledgement that's been made tonight for the traditional owners of this land, the Wurundjeri people. As the first scientists and innovators of this land, I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. And the second acknowledgement that I'd like to make is that I am a straight white male that's about to stand on here for 15 minutes to talk about the female reproductive tract. So I may have an anatomical, scientific sort of understanding of what's going on here, but I have absolutely no lived experience at all. So I will be mansplaining my way through a lot of tonight. And let's kick off that mansplaining with mammals, which are, we'll start light. Mammals are reasonably unweird. So, and we'll also start with the uterus. So I can hear you asking, how many different types of uterus are there in mammals, Jarrod? Great question. There are broadly 4 types. So we will start with, so on the right here, we've got the simplex reproductive tract, 1 vagina, 1 cervix, 1 uterus, 2 fallopian tubes, and 2 ovaries. This is what humans have. Gorillas, chimpanzees, everything that is kind of like us has this. Bicornuate, now very similar, 1 vagina, 1 cervix. Now you can see that the actual uterine body, which we call here 1 big large cavity, has sort of been punched from the top, and it's not split, but it's just sort of been indented at the top. So everything else is kind of the same, just been punched from the top. And we're starting to get a little bit weird now. So bipartite. So we've got 1 vagina, where we go? Okay, so 1 vagina, 1 cervix, but now we actually have 2 entirely separated uterine horns now, and you can probably see why they're called horns, because they go off left and right. So already a little bit weird, not as weird as this one. We've got 1 vagina and 2 cervixes, and 2 completely separate uteruses as well. So over here we've got 1 cervix, 2 uterine horns. Over here we've got 2 cervixes, 2 uteruses. Really weird. Compared to us, anyway, compared to a simplex. So bipartite, this strategy is kind of common in rodents and some large carnivores, and the duplex is also common in rodents and some species like rabbits as well. So why the hell do we need 2 uteruses or 2 uterine horns? I can hear you asking. Great question again. This is primarily because the species that have these have a lot of young. They have a lot of babies, so they need a lot of space. And they're also very small babies so that they can have a lot of them. You know that rabbits, that whole expression, breed like rabbits, they have a lot of young. Rodents have a lot of young. Whereas if we go back to the human uterus, we've just kind of got 1 space there because we generally only have 1 young. We've only got 1 space for 1. Whoops. Right, so we're cruising. Pretty simple. Now we're going to start sort of look at a different area of the reproductive tract, and we're going to play a game. We're going to play Find the... What are we going to find? The clitoris! All right, very excited. Here we go. This is a diagram of the human vulva. By the way, everything external, everything that you see here is the vulva. But 10 points if you can pinpoint where the clitoris is. And I'll give you not long at all because it should be really simple. I'll point it out for you. It is right here, clitoris, clitoral head, there you go. Vagina down the bottom. This whole thing is not the vagina. The vagina is once you go inside. As soon as you're internal, that's the vagina. Everything outside, vulva. Right? Anatomy class, mansplaining, done. Okay? Do it again. One more time. Round will go. No. So, we know where the clitoris is. We know what it looks like. Or do we? Who's seen this before? A couple of people. Good. Awesome. So this is actually a 3D printed scale model of what the entire clitoris actually looks like. So we sort of think of it as just that sort of top bit because that's what we see and interact with. But there's actually a ton more that's going on behind the scenes that we don't see. And when we compare it to what a penis diagram looks like, you can see how dramatically similar they actually are. And there is, of course, a reason for this, that when you're about 2 months old as a fetus, essentially the clitoris and the penis have a common ancestor. They originate from the same sort of tissue that only starts to differentiate after about 2 months, roughly. So you can see here, about 2 months, once the hormones sort of kick in, you're sort of destined to go down 1 or 2 fates, or even somewhere in the middle as well, because sex is also fluid, not just gender. So, not your regular capture test. So, we are going to select all animals that have a clitoris. So, have a little think. Some of them may look pretty weird. Why that's a sea turtle, a shark. We've spoken about sharks today a lot. Hyenas, snakes, a lot of weird ones up there. And so, yeah, take a guess. And in 3, 2, 1, those animals have a clitoris. So, yes, snakes have a clitoris. And this was actually only discovered about 2 months ago, believe it or not. And it was by a female-led team of researchers in Australia, of course. Woo! And they actually said that it's not that it wasn't there, it's just that nobody cared to look. So lots of different animals on here have a clitoris, some that you probably knew, some that have definitely surprised you, like snakes, ducks. Ducks we'll get to in a minute, because ducks are very weird. But there is also another one that I'd like to highlight, which is this one over here, the spotted hyena. So what you're looking at here is not a male spotted hyena. This is a female. And what you're looking at here is a clitoris. This is an elongated clitoris, also known as a pseudopenis, that spotted hyenas have. And what do they use it for? Well, the 3 main reasons for sex. Yes, they have sex with their clitoris. They can sort of retract it and extend it at will. They urinate through it, so it is sort of the exit point of the urethra as well. And yes, that last terrifying one, they also have to give birth through it. So I imagine it's not fully extended the entire time, but it does also get extended during birth, so it is, yeah, birth can get even more traumatic. So why did it evolve this way? Why the hell does a hyena have a pseudopenis? Well, short answer is we still don't really know, but to take a couple of guesses is that hyenas are a matriarchal society, and this is an example of something called sexual mimicry. And it's where one sex imitates the other either through anatomically, behaviorally, for some sort of benefit. And in the case of the matriarchal society of hyenas, when there's a new dominant hyena that comes in, much like lions, they will kill the young of the previous dominant animal. So the matriarchal female will come in and kill the younger female hyenas. So if you look like a guy, chances are you might survive a little bit longer. And number 2 is a super cool quirk of nature, and is that it's essentially, I said over here, yes, they have to have sex through it. How the hell do you have sex with that? Well, exactly, that's the point. It's very, very hard for a hyena to not give consent for sex. So it's essentially one of nature's anti-rape devices. So she has to actually expose her vagina by withdrawing her entire clitoris back inside. Her vagina's over here, by the way. So it's very hard to essentially rape a hyena. So that's why, or potentially why, that they developed one of these amazing sort of pseudopenises. Yeah, birds are weird. So as a reproductive biologist, comparing birds to mammals is incredibly weird. So we know a biological male in humans has XY chromosomes. So they're the heterogametic sex there. And birds is actually the opposite. So the ZZ, they don't have XY, it's ZW and ZZ. That's around the other way around. And also they lay eggs. Of course, that's kind of weird for mammals. But I did mention ducks earlier. So we're going to focus on ducks. And here we go. So this is a duck penis. It is spiky, it is coiled, it is terrifying. So what we have on the right-hand side here, this one here, this is another penis, but it's been fixed with formaldehyde, so it looks a little bit weirder. But this is the duck vagina. So you've got the coiled penis coiling in one direction, you've got the duck vagina coiling in the other direction. So why would a duck have a coiled vagina, have a coil or a coiled penis? Well, actually, first of all, penises and vaginas are very, very rare in birds. Only about 3% of birds have them. So already very weird. But why they have a coiled vagina is, again, another example of nature's anti-rape device. So ducks are extremely promiscuous, to put it very politely. And what you can do if you have a VR headset, you can actually, at home, Google and download an app that will take you inside of a duck vagina.
Why would you do that?
I don't know. Science? I don't know. For fun. Yeah, so if anybody is willing to do that, go home and Google duck vagina app. Trust me, my search history is a lot weirder. You can do that. So cephalopods. Cephalopods are really weird. So cephalopods are a group of animals that include octopi, squids, cuttlefish. Super weird looking animals already, right? They're slimy, they can sort of contort their body, they've got chromatophores that can change color, they've got 8 limbs, weird stuff already. So of course they have really weird penises and vaginas. Or do they have them at all? Actually, they don't have one at all, because why do you sort of need one if your mantle, which is this large area of the squid in this case, is sort of exposed to the air, to the water naturally? You don't really need to develop a penis, or you don't need to develop a vagina that's these highly specified organs to essentially, in the terms of a penis. And also, I said that they don't have penises, and this diagram says it has a penis. Ignore that. It's wrong. But it is the only good, clear photo of sort of a squid diagram that I could find. And of course, there isn't one of the female side because #patriarchy. So yeah, you don't need a penis because all you can do is sort of use one of your other 8 limbs, reach inside of yourself, grab your sperm, and just kind of throw it near the female, on the female, in the female, whichever one works, they will take. So you don't really need one as a squid. But this is what an ovary looks like under the microscope. So the top here, this big yellowy bit is the ovary where all the eggs are. And the oviducts are these sort of thin white tubes, which are also known as fallopian tubes. And the oviduct glands is where the sperm and egg will meet and they'll fertilize the egg if they ovulate. So some species like squids, like some species of shark, Komodo dragons are another one, actually can store sperm. So they mate with an animal and then they disappear for 2 years. And then all of a sudden they're pregnant. This happens. This happens. It's happened in captivity in zoos. It's happened in captivity in aquariums. People have had, for example, a female shark, I believe a grey nurse shark. I don't know, Dr. Olive shark person, maybe fact check me here. But I believe it's a grey nurse shark can also do this. And it was 2 years after the shark had arrived in the aquarium and 2 years after seeing a male, she actually gave birth. And it was to a genetic offspring as well. It wasn't a cloned animal. So squids are one of them. So they may come across a squid. He throws her sperm near her. She's like, great, I'll take that. And then they leave. And then she'll get pregnant kind of whenever she wants. So good for her. Monotremes. Monotremes are one of the weirdest groups of animals out there. They're those primitive mammal-like things. They're mammals. They don't have, they don't actually have nipples, whereas most mammals, or all mammals actually do. Instead of breastfeeding, for example, they sort of sweat out milk. It's just sort of kind of just oozes out of them. And they also lay eggs. So we had that in the quiz earlier. And they were platypus and echidna. And reproductively, they are fascinating. So, echidna. This is an echidna. This is an echidna penis. Platypus, platypus penis. 1 shaft, 4 heads. Just insane. 2 shafts, spiky, and 2 heads as well. Again, crazy. So it would make sense if you had 4 heads to have 4 vaginas or 4 uteruses or 4 cervixes or something 4. But no, that would be too easy. There's only 2 uteruses, and there's not actually a vagina. There's a cloaca, and a cloaca meaning essentially where all tracts lead to the cloaca. So there's the urinary system, the digestive system, and the reproductive system. So no vagina, they've just got a cloaca and 2 uteruses. So why have 4 heads? We still don't really know. Platypus, 2 heads, and it's spiky. You would expect 2 vaginas or 2 uteruses or something along those lines. Yes, there are 2 uteruses, but only one of them works in every platypus. Why, again, big question mark. These group of animals are so interesting, so fascinating. The entire right side of the reproductive tract actually just doesn't work. The ovaries don't really produce eggs. Fallopian tubes are really kind of shriveled and tiny. The uterus doesn't really replicate a functional uterus, such as on the other side. So why have two heads on your penis? Who knows? Maybe this side is on its way out. Maybe it's on its way in. Time will tell. Marsupials. Okay, last one. Marsupials are also very, very weird. And example that I'll give here is the kangaroo. So on the right, this is a reminder of sort of what the human reproductive system looks like, the female reproductive system. And on the left, we have the kangaroo. So we've got a urogenital sinus, so that's where the reproductive tract and the urinary tract meet. And what we have directly after that is 3 vaginas. So we've got 2 lateral vaginas here and 1 central medial vagina. And if we look at the diagram as well of the kangaroo penis, it's got 2 heads. So why are there 3 vaginas, but there's only 2 heads? This one there's actually an answer for. So when the male ejaculates, each head will ejaculate down one of the lateral vaginae. And at that same time, kangaroos and marsupials have this really amazing ability to be kind of pregnant at the same time that they're nursing, and that they can also have something called embryonic diapause, which I would encourage everybody here to look up because it's amazing. But essentially, so she can be pregnant a couple of days, the embryo's a couple of days old, and once it comes out of either of the uteruses, it travels down this medial vagina, completely avoiding all the gross sperm. So it kind of works. She can sort of give birth and mate and be pregnant all at the same time. So it's a huge win-win-win for the kangaroo. Last one. Okay. So has anybody here heard of a baculum before? Yes. Okay. What is it? So it is, well, one looks like this, for example. It is a penis bone. And it is exactly where the term boner came from. So it is in a lot of animals, rodents, walruses, squirrels. There are lots of reasons for having it. So your penis doesn't get injured. You can last a lot longer during sex. But if we remember back to some of those earlier slides of how similar the clitoris is to the penis, there is also a clitoris bone in some of these species. So squirrels have one. And walruses have one. You can see it's very, very small in comparison, over 0.5 meter versus 2 centimeters. And that's, again, one of those things that sort of starts to develop before there's that intense sort of sexual selection takes place. And there are reasons why the males have one, why the females have one. It's kind of evolutionary. It's a relic. It's kind of on its way out. So there's no real reason that we know of why they should have one, and it's probably on its way out. So there we are. There's a whole bunch of random clitorises and vaginas and ovaries and everything on there that we've covered today. Hopefully you've enjoyed the mansplaining and it wasn't too bad. And yes, thank you. I'll take questions.
Wow, that lived up to my expectation of what your talk was going to be all about. Do we have any questions? We might get some house lights so I can actually see. Yep, right up the front here.
If you could, like in all your research and like highlights and lowlights and things that work really well and things that don't work so well, if you could change something about the human reproductive setup, or like
get rid of endometriosis. Yep. We don't know a heck of a lot about even our own reproductive system. So there is so much unknown there that we could potentially change. Endometriosis just being one of these examples, and some other animals can develop endometriosis as well. But there's also polycystic ovarian syndrome. There's a whole bunch of different infertility sort of things that I would love to know more about to change, to get rid of those essentially. But I kind of like what we have. I think it's pretty good. I don't know. Am I complacent? I wouldn't change a thing.
Of course you wouldn't. Any other questions? Yes, so going up front here.
There's a lot more you haven't seen still. Making these slides.
What's the one takeaway a male should take away from your talk? I have a pretty good idea. What's your answer?
How fantastic the female reproductive tract is. How incredibly amazing everybody that has a female reproductive tract is, everything that they have to go through. And hopefully you know where the clitoris is if you didn't know where it was before.
Amazing. Any other questions? I can't really see out the back. I don't know whether... Yep, we've got a question right at the back here.
What was the word? Sorry, get what in the same way? Oh, periods? Oh my God, I'm so glad you asked me that.
I think this is a whole other NerdNite talk that Jarrod actually proposed to me, so go ahead.
Exactly, I could do a whole other talk on this. My PhD was around menstruating mice. So thank you for this next 20-minute talk that I'm about to give.
I'll just leave out the back and you can get the slides up.
Less than 2% of species on the planet have a menstrual cycle. So of the 5,500 mammalian species, that equates to about 80 or 90. So most of that is the great apes like us, gorillas, chimpanzees, all the big apes that we think of. There's 4 species of bat. There's a cute little thing called the elephant shrew. And they have a menstrual cycle, a period, but it's not human-like. There's like things that are similar, but it's not quite the same. And thank you for asking this, because you can Google my research after this. Is one species, the Egyptian spiny mouse, that has a human-like menstrual cycle. So in every way that we have measured so far, it has a very, very similar reproductive cycle to us. They even get PMS. I know.
I would like
little
to
mice.
say that's cute, but... we have a question right at the front here.
Back to periods. All those different species to their periods.
No, because then it wouldn't be a period. Because then it would be, so then you would go from the two sides of the coin would have a period or a menstrual cycle, or you would have an estrous cycle. So any animal with a menstrual cycle isn't governed by things like the seasons, temperature, light, food, things like that other species, that cows, dogs, things that you think of. So only animals that have a menstrual cycle, it's cyclical every time. There may be, influences like nutrition, but to quite extremes, you start to see effects like that. So all of the animals that I mentioned, gorillas, mice, shrews, bats, it's all cyclical.
Very cool. Yep, we've got another question up here.
I love how this is segued.
Ooh, what's the evolutionary
The
hold that it
toughest
has
question
on us?
to answer again. So it's kind of, we're lucky, evolutionarily lucky. I know. Mansplaining again, I'm sorry.
And by we, you
By
mean?
we. By we, not me. So essentially, menstruation is an incredibly taxing process. So only animals that are basically at the top of their food chain, like us and gorillas and chimpanzees, bats don't really have many predators because they live in caves and things like that, has sort of evolved in the way that we can afford to do it. And it's a very good method for selecting embryos and selecting a pregnancy. So we've evolved, potentially, this is like one of the leading theories, is that we've evolved to be able to have it. So why the hell does this tiny little mouse running around in the desert have a menstrual cycle? Still TBD.
All right, we've got one more question, or time for one more question. We might go up the back again. Ooh, do all animals that have a clitoris experience pleasure?
I hope so.
How do you measure that?
Exactly. That is a whole different PhD. Well, some animals, like, if I can go back. Yeah, my slides are pretty weird. So some of these animals actually do have sex for pleasure that we think of anyway. So we know, or assume that dolphins do, because dolphins actually have very active sex life, and we notice that because, or we assume that it's for pleasure because one, we know that they have a clitoris, and two, we see them breeding outside of their breeding season. So we're assuming there's some sort of pleasural or like societal sort of like bonding thing going on. And snakes, and this is another thing why the researchers were really pissed off that no one picked it out before, was that snakes, when they have sex, is that they sort of coil up together and they rub their tails together for like ages. So it only makes sense that there's some pleasure going on there. So I'm hoping yes, and I'm assuming that most of them do have pleasure.
What a way to finish. If you could please join me in thanking Dr. Jarrod McKenna